So in this video, what I want to talk about is understanding the power of the heart and understanding really how we can transcend some of the levels of the mind, the desire that we have towards understanding certain intellectual ideas, and how we can transcend those by being more so in our heart center and understand a couple of the ideas I'm going to share with you, and ultimately how we can apply those into everyday living, practical ways that we can ensure ourselves to living more and more from the heart rather than from the head. But what I'm really coming to understand is that the head and the intellectual knowledge can only get us so far. Now, right here, what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to show you the chart that I used in my prior video where I talked about realms of consciousness and understanding how to transcend certain levels. And just for this video's sake, I'm just going to explain it a little bit. And it's understanding that there are different levels of consciousness, and that as we begin to understand how we can transcend certain emotions, we then learn how we can amp up the consciousness that level that we're at. And you'll notice that if you get up to the reasoning or the mind aspect, you'll see that right around 400 is reasoning, is understanding acceptance, then reasoning, having a certain level for what things mean in life. And then that gets us to that level, the intellect understanding certain realizations, but then we get to the level of love. And in order to transcend that level, we have to really drop all those ideologies that we thought of who we were, and as we begin to drop those, it's almost like we drop some baggage, some weight that's kind of carrying us down. What I want to do in this video is show some practical ways that we can learn how to transcend those ideas so that ultimately we can feel more love in our life. Using the intellect, there are certain benefits that we can get from it. So the intellect is the idea that chart, that we, through the intellect, are able to transcend a lot of the lower vibrational feelings or the emotions that I guess just don't feel so good, and that as we begin to understand and have certain realizations, certain ways that we can shift our perspective about it, we start to transcend ourselves until we get to this place of reasoning, which feels a whole lot better than the lower emotions. But once we get there, in order to break through the threshold and get to the feeling of love and to exist in that realm of consciousness, the way that we do that is by first off having this understanding that anything that we believe to be true in our life will appear to be true. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, this is something I learned from forensics debate. Because when I did forensics debate in high school, the idea is that we'd have a topic that was nationwide, and this topic would be something that we had to make an affirmative for and a negative for. So we had to make both sides of the cases, and then the day that we went to the tournament and we went against different people, we didn't get to choose which one we were. It would sometimes be a coin flip, but most of the time it was predetermined. So I'd go maybe 4 rounds throughout the day, and out of those 4 rounds, I'd go maybe 3-1, 1 the other, 2-2, whatever it was. But I had to do research on both sides, and it was funny because as I would do research on one side, I'd start to see it from that point of view. Not that necessarily it would become my new viewpoint, but I would really start to buy into it and kind of see how somebody could be and think that to be true, their realization of it. Now, this comes from understanding that everything in life is fundamentally neutral, that the meaning we give it, that whether we think it to be true or false, comes from the point of view of the ego. You see, as we begin to understand more about this, and we literally begin to transcend these ideas, these lower emotions, we become to conceptualize certain ideas, and that will get us to a certain point. But what we must do is drop the necessity to have and to facilitate information into different categories, and what we can then do is drop the idea of the ego. Now, one of the easiest ways to do this is to first off just become aware of the ego and what the ego thinks. When we're able to observe the ego, we're then able to actually become present to the moment. Now, in this present of the moment, in this realm of being observant of what's going on, we'll realize that there's the ego perspective, and then we can observe the ego. In this observation point of view is where love exists, is where we're actually able to have true love, because sometimes the ego might have love, but it might be conditional, right? Many of us have been through that before, where we feel attached to something that we love, whether it be something new we just got or a person. But once we realize that we are unconditional love, that we can be in this moment now, we begin to drop all those ideologies of the intellect. We realize that they're really just one point of view, and what we then begin to do is we then begin to feel into the moment. We then give ourselves this ability to surrender those ideas. So a powerful part of living from the heart is surrendering to the ideas in our mind, surrendering to the ideologies that surface up, observing them, and as we begin to observe them, we begin to shed all of the lower emotions, all of the intellectual ideas of what things mean in life, understanding understanding causality, understanding different concepts of things that we've bought into, and we then begin to see that almost everything is neutral. It has no built-in meaning other than the meaning that we give it, and once we get to that point to where we can really see that, and just to give you a simple analogy of this, think of the idea of a rainy day, right? A rainy day does not have a positive meaning or a negative meaning other than the perceptual lens that we see it. If we see it as a positive thing, we feel positive emotion. As we see it as a negative thing, then we feel the negative emotion. It's fundamentally neutral, and that is the idea behind understanding all of the intellect, all of the fact that whatever we focus on, we'll get more facts from, because whatever we focus on grows, so we'll get more perspective and ideologies that kind of reaffirm it. But then what we can do is understand that we can become present to the moment, bring awareness into our body, and observe the mind. And as we begin to observe the mind, we begin to not identify with the attachments that it has. As we begin to drop all these baggages, all these things that are below, all these ideologies that we're conceptually trying to logically understand, as we begin to drop those and we surrender to even understanding it or to really grab a hold of it, we then begin to drop the attachments that we have. And as we drop those attachments, we're able to become present to the moment by feeling inside of our bodies, because we're observing our mind and we're not being identified with the past or identified with the future. And as we begin to do that, we begin to then remove the barriers. Now, this is something I want to talk about, because when we drop the ego, we drop our identity. Now, our identity is anything that emphasizes that this is me and that that is you. And the more that we emphasize that separateness, the more that we separate ourselves from the natural love that we are. The way that we can feel love with our environment or everyone that we come into contact with is by not emphasizing those barriers, not emphasizing that separateness. And as we begin to drop the ego and realize that we're all connected and having this understanding that we're all part of the same consciousness, we then gain this ability to really feel present to the moment, but also feeling this connection between all of us. One way to understand this is that any time that we are emphasizing that this is me and that that is you, that is emphasizing the idea of ego or attachment to certain ideologies, and that begins to create distance. If this wall wasn't here, I'd go back even further to show you that that is creating the metaphorical distance between us, but I choose to be right here with you because I choose not to put these boundaries as to who we are. I choose not to emphasize the separateness, the dichotomy between who I think I am to who I think you are, and because I don't put labels on that, because I come from that point of view, I have more of an ability to actually love who you are. I'm not attached to who you are, but I love who you are because I understand that me and you aren't separate. I understand that my environment even isn't separate from who I am, but once again, I'm not attached to it. I just recognize it. So what I want to encourage you to recognize is that you are not separate from your environment. You are not separate from the people that you come into contact with. The more that you become aware of this, the more that you're able to drop the ego, or shall I say, the more that you drop the ego, the more that you will become aware of this love point of view, of you not seeing yourself as separate, you seeing yourself as connected to everything that you come into contact with, every person you come into contact with, and then from that point of view, you're able to transcend the dialects of the mind, the necessity to understand logical ideas, and then you begin to exist in a frame of living from the heart rather than from the head. It's a beautiful thing. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you feel more love in your life right now because you're becoming more aware that that's all that you are and that everything around you, you're connected to. So feel free to like this video if you liked it. Share it if you found it of value, and I'll see you guys on the next vid. Alright, peace. Much love. Namaste. Alright, bye.